So welcome to the Invicta Vita podcast. Today I'm delighted to welcome Abigail James. Abigail, thank you so much for being here. It's an honor to have you.
Oh, it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
I'm really excited about our chat. You are often referred to as the Queen of Skin. You had iconic clients such as Cher amongst your list, and now you coach female entrepreneurs such as myself. So thank you for that. But a lot of people don't know the story behind your success. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. You were a single mum of 3, living on benefits at one point.
Mm-hmm.
How did you deal with those challenges, which must have been incredibly difficult, and turn that into a strength?
Yeah, so good question. Firstly, I don't know, is the honest answer. The thing is, when you become a parent, it's usually never on your list of things to do to become a single parent. I mean, that might be a life choice. However, it wasn't necessarily a choice that I was actively making. But life throws us some things that we have to deal with. And when you're suddenly solely responsible for housing and feeding 3 other humans that you brought into the world, I feel that it's not that there isn't a choice, but there actually isn't a choice. You have to, pull your stuff together and make stuff happen. So I don't know how I did it, because when you're in it, you're just doing and you're on this momentum. And I know I was in a position where, because I'd got 3 children and I was looking for employment because I didn't want to remain on benefits. That's not how I was raised, and it's not the future that I wanted for my children. But I couldn't get a job, an actual paid for salary job, high enough to pay childcare for my 3 children. So life almost was pushing me in this direction of entrepreneurship through the situation that I found myself in. And I'm going to say, hell-bent on, I need to build something. I couldn't afford a social life at the time. So when my kids were in bed, I'd be Googling. This was the days before Instagram. So I wasn't even wasting time like going down the social hole. I was reading blogs and writing, and I was just so laser focused on, I know that there is a better life for me and my children. And I wasn't thinking beyond that. So it was just, buckle up. This is what we're doing. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, you often talk about having that fire in your belly. Where do you think that comes from? Because a lot of people would have just given up. You pushed forward.
Yeah. I think often we don't know that we have that fire in our belly until we're forced into lighting it. I think life sometimes throws us some things. And I know people might go, oh my goodness, how did you do that? Where does that come from? It's not until we're put into situations that we realise actually how strong we are. And we don't know often how long that strength needs to continue for. I do remember, times where you're having to show up during the day, whether it's trying to build your business, do the child thing and feeding and all of that stuff. And then in the evening, you're kind of in the shower crying because I think physically and emotionally exhausted, but I couldn't see an end, whatever I was thinking the end of the journey was. But I'm a huge believer we grow through what we go through. And we don't know until we're put in those situations. I also feel that a lot of us, coping mechanisms, they are instilled, the buttons are instilled when we're younger. And, I have a lot of love for both of my parents and my childhood, but we all have very different experiences of that. And I've done a lot of therapy, to compartmentalize some of my upbringing. And even though my parents were there physically, maybe they weren't necessarily there emotionally for me. So as a middle child, you end up actually becoming quite resilient and being able to cope as a little bit of an island and things. And maybe actually some of those coping mechanisms and that resilience had actually been instilled in me when I was younger, but you don't know that at the time. And it's not saying that my parents were doing a bad job. They were doing the job that they could in their generation with the skill sets and everything that they had around them. And I figure that's what I was also doing when I was raising my children.
Yeah, I can completely empathize with the middle child feeling. And as you say, it's, you had no other option. You had 3 children, so dependent on you.
Because what is the other option?
What's the other option?
Yeah, it
exactly.
is like, what is the other option?
What is the other option? Yeah. No, I do feel when you actually are responsible for someone, whether it's a child, whether it's a sibling who has special needs. I have a a brother who's autistic, I do feel it gives you that sense of responsibility. It's not just yourself. There's
Yeah.
someone else who needs you, who's dependent on you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
I also acknowledge with my children that the upbringing that they had was, if I was going to describe the upbringing that I planned for them, what they had was like, I couldn't have even dreamt of the crazy journey that they also had. Because as much as I was the single mum trying to hustle and build a business and house them and feed them and everything else, they were the children on the receiving end of that as an upbringing. So the upbringing that they had was not in a million years of what I'd have ever dreamt for them. But I was doing the best with what I could at that time. And I know that, potentially they're going to need some therapy about the childhood that they've had. But maybe I feel that maybe the most gorgeous, creative, resilient humans might have actually had some testing and trials along the way. And maybe most of us can now relate to that. I don't know.
I agree. And I think that actually your children would look at this now and go, wow, our mum had to raise the three of us on her own. She was living on benefits at one point, but they got so much love from you and they actually got to experience hardship, yes. But actually, I feel that probably makes them more interesting human beings. And actually, if they were to go into an interview, if I were to interview your children, they'd probably be a lot more interesting than someone who's had no struggles, And some people have had a very easy life, and then it's not really helped them when they then do have a challenge. And I find that people who get challenges thrown their way, the ones who do the best are the ones that actually have lived through some kind of hardship. Now, you can have financial hardship, you can have emotional hardship. There are some people who might be very comfortable financially, but who actually emotionally lived under abuse. Or equally, you might have someone who lived on a council estate and had a really rough upbringing, or maybe someone who was a victim of domestic abuse, or maybe they saw their mum being beaten up, But those make for really resilient human beings later on in life.
I think it teaches us that we have to look outside of the box. Okay, what are the options here? How can I navigate my way through this? Maybe it's realizing that actually there isn't a box even to try and navigate in the first place.
Yeah.
But that's what resilience is. It's not the separation of what life is throwing at you. It's actually when life does throw stuff at you, as it will. That is the gorgeousness of being a human and having this gift of living a life. It's how we deal with it and approach it.
Absolutely. You talked about hustling and you had to hustle, and I think you were incredible at it.
Yeah.
What was that pinch me moment for you when it all started to feel real and you went, wow?
I don't think I ever allowed myself the moment because it was hustle. I've got to this bit. So, I moved from the countryside in the Cotswolds to London with the kids. And at that point in my career, I was working alongside the Queen's doctor. Now, that should have been a pat on the back. Abigail, you've done good here. Yeah. But I was hustling. It's like, okay, so what's next? I wanted to get a book deal. So I got the book deal. Eventually, it took many years to get the book deal. And then when it was actually published, and I had this gorgeous launch event, and it was a bestseller on Amazon. But then I was, so what's next? And I never allowed myself, you've done good there, because I never felt good enough. I never felt a success. And if there was any bit of advice I would give you, other entrepreneurs, other humans, to give yourself those moments to actually feel the success moments, the wins. Because unless we give ourselves that, we never will feel the success that we're actually achieving. So I never felt a success. Even, you mentioned, Cher was a client. I do remember the day that I got the phone call of, Abigail, Cher wants a facial.
Who said that to you? Is it?
So this sounds really, really bougie. At the time, I did have a book agent, and he happened to also be Cher's agent. That sounds really, really bougie.
That sounds really cool.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. But at the time, I was literally in bed on my laptop doing some work, and mobile's going, and I'm like, okay, well, I will speak to him. And then it's like, Abigail, what are you doing now? Cher wants a facial. I'm like, I'm not that busy. But anyway, even through that part of my career and getting the second book deal, and I still felt like a failure. But that comes back to, I've got the history of, 15, 20 years of being that single parent, and maybe some hangover from other bits and pieces in my life that I'd always felt I was still striving. I was still trying to prove to whoever that I was something and I wasn't just little Abby. And I never gave myself that time to really feel it. But it's not until life forces you to step off the hustle. And I think I used to hold that hustle badge as it's almost like a badge of honor. Oh my goodness, I was up at 5, and yes, I went to the boxing class this morning, and then I was in with my clients, and it's like this treadmill that I don't feel that it's still quite as badge of honor, because I burnt out like crazy, and you don't know until it hits you. And it's literally your mind and body going, I cannot physically do this anymore. And it's not until you're forced to stop that you go, do you know what, actually, I've done okay there. I've achieved a lot, but it's not until sometimes we're forced into those situations.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. One thing we've both discussed is that we're both very petite, we look quite feminine, and in our careers, although we've had two very different careers, we've often been seen as fragile, weak, not able to assert ourselves because of the way we look. And I want to ask you, do you see that as a disadvantage, or do you actually see that as like a hidden strength, and how do you navigate that?
Love this question. So I know we've spoken about this previously, and it's interesting. I actually feel that we have similar views, but we've probably both come from very different angles on it, because I possibly felt that my massive 5'2" and shrinking was an inhibit, because maybe I wasn't confident at those times, and it wasn't anything that was put into me to be a strong, independent female. That wasn't my upbringing. So the petiteness, the little Abby, that was what I was called when it was little Abby. So you almost start embodying that physically and emotionally. So maybe there was other things wrapped up in me not feeling it. But now I love being this potentially 5'1.5". And also, I'm sat here with a short haircut today. I sway between the long, gorgeous locks and very feminine, and then I go, no, do you know what? I want to just feel a bit more. I don't know. It's not feminine because I love being a woman. I really love being a woman. But just playing around with it and not having to hold on to the stereotypes. And because I've come from the beauty business, there's a whole load of stereotypes there. So chopping your hair off and just having a different feel and vibe, I find really empowering. Yeah. But I mean, you in the banking industry, as a petite, feminine-looking woman, I know you've shared that must have come with some, whether it's challenges or opinions that you might have been under, I don't know.
Yeah, it was a lot of opinions. I think one, obviously, I was young when I started out, and even when I became quite senior and when I was in my early 30s, there was this constant remark of, oh, you're still very young, or are you an assistant? Do you work in marketing? Do you work in HR? But I couldn't be taken seriously as a relationship director and as someone who had, at that point, almost 10 years of experience under her belt. It was always this sort of comment that you must be in a job that mainly women do, such as marketing. It was never, no, you must be technical. And I remember one client actually saying, oh, wow, when you opened your mouth, you really shut me up. And so there was this constant expectation that you couldn't be feminine, young, considered to look okay, and then be intelligent or have a brain. And that really bothered me. And also the over-sexualization, the comments about my legs or what I was wearing. I never wanted to look like a man and dress in a way that, was very masculine. I love wearing dresses and fitted blazers and heels. I like dressing like that. So I never wanted to hide or to cover up. But at the same time, there was this view that if you looked a certain way, you couldn't be taken as seriously as certain men. And I do know from speaking to some female entrepreneurs that they only started to get investment when they started dressing like men, which I think is really interesting and really sad as well.
I, again, interesting. I mean, being in the beauty industry, and I spent a number of years doing brand deals and being as an influencer, I know doing the filming and the certain angles, and you've got to have your hair and your makeup done a certain way, and you are chosen not just for your expertise, but for how you look. And there's just something in me at this age and stage in my life. I don't like that. I've got a brain. I've got stuff to think and say, and it's not just about appearance. But I suppose that is the industry that I chose. Obviously, your industry with banking and finance is totally different. But yeah, I mean, there's so much wrapped up in the physical appearance of men and women.
That I'm seeing a lot of younger women now saying, no, I'm not going to be pigeonholed or just spoken to based on the way I look or have comments about my appearance. So I think that it is good that people are kind of reclaiming that narrative.
Yeah.
I did talk about the finance industry being very cutthroat. What was it like in the skincare and beauty industry? Was it very cutthroat as well?
Yes. Yeah, it's fascinating. So when I basically retrained as a beauty therapist, which you're not considered top of the stack of like the career or the intelligence ladder, the hair and beauty industry. But prior to that, I was a fishmonger's daughter, doing business things with my dad. But I was just hell-bent on becoming a facialist. When I was doing that, the word facialist didn't even exist. And there was a handful in London. I mean, literally a handful of names that you kind of knew. You did not mix with each other. It was very solitary. And the beauty industry as a whole, there are some big characters in there, which it's very cliquey. I wasn't in those cliques. I wasn't in that, and that's still out there. And some, not all, but the big beauty brands, they want you for your knowledge to benefit them. It's not necessarily the holistic, gorgeous, friendly kind of thing that it is. There are some real gems of brands and humans amongst it, but I didn't find it a friendly industry. And if I'm being totally honest, I almost fell out of love with the beauty industry. And I love being more in the wellness, spa, mindset, coaching kind of space. It's just more my tribe.
I think there's more empathy, and from what you're saying, it's not dissimilar to the banking industry, which can be very cutthroat and very lonely sometimes.
Absolutely.
And lonely, I expected personally more women to stick together, and they didn't.
I found the beauty industry almost the opposite of that. And actually, in some settings and environments, actually really detrimental for your own confidence, feeling part of community or included. But again, you do get to an age where you go, I'm okay with that. But I wasn't okay with that for a number of years. That's the joy of growing older. You realise certain people and tribes, it's okay for them not to be yours. You kind of, what was it that's cropped up in a coaching session? It might have been with yours or maybe one of my other clients. They were kind of viewing this thing going on in the industry. Actually, it was one of my other clients. And they were going, oh my goodness, this thing is going on and there's this huge collective invite around a table at Claridge's. And she was like, I want an invite to that table. And I was like, do you? And we discussed it. And the key is you don't need an invite to those tables. You build your own table.
I love that. You build your own table. You build your own tribe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you could be a tribe of one for a bit. It's actually gorgeous.
Yeah.
There's a time and a place where the solo, the solitary, being really selective about who you spend your time with, because we all get like under 100 years on this planet. Let's be realistic. Yeah. It's really precious. Our lives are just as important as someone else's, as is theirs. And we don't have to spend time with people that don't vibe with us.
Completely. Yeah. It's finding the people
who
vibe with you.
Yeah.
If you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what do you think that would be?
It would be exactly based on that it's okay to not be in the cool girl gang. It is totally okay. And, it's quality over quantity.
Yeah, I love that. Quality over quantity.
Yeah.
That's definitely a shift that I've seen in my life, and I'm a lot happier for it. So, yeah. You've obviously now shifted into coaching female entrepreneurs, such as myself. What inspired that shift?
So I feel maybe a falling out of the industry that I happen to be in. Not falling out as in I had an argument with someone, but just an emotional shift going on. I always felt whatever I was going through in life, whether it was becoming the single parent or building my businesses or the things that were going on, I never felt sorry for myself. And I always felt I'm going through this for a bigger purpose. And I feel now turning 50, and as I was coming up to, okay, I'm like late 40s, what's my next era going to be? And I just felt, I wanted to learn something else. I'm a huge believer in continual learning, evolving, but how can I show up in a different way for this next phase of my life? And it just really felt right to be that support, that knowledge, that hand-holding, whatever it was, for other women, whether in the workplace or as entrepreneurs, because I know that younger Abigail, she'd have just really loved that. And that wasn't an option for her on her journey, whether it was financially or even just knowing that coaching and mentoring was a thing. I didn't know that. So it would have been a more enjoyable, maybe faster, maybe, I don't know, just a more easeful process that younger version of me could have had. So I just felt it's my responsibility to invest financially and time-wise in my knowledge so that maybe I can be that for other women.
I love that. That's really great. And so you're coaching these female entrepreneurs. What are some of the challenges that they're facing?
Good question. There's definitely similarities. They might be long-standing entrepreneurs, or even currently, I'm just thinking of some others. One of the ladies, she's a human rights lawyer. Another lady, she's in corporate in a charity. So yes, there's the entrepreneurs, but there's also those in the corporate spaces as well. I think some of the similarities are us showing up as women in the workplace, whatever that might be. Getting to understand and listen to our inner voice. So coaching and mentoring, it's not just here's the strategy, here's the structure. The way I approach it is from the holistic point of view, because sometimes we can have those blocks in us that we're like, why is this not working? And sometimes we do need to go that little holistic, the feeling, the blocks, the emotional stuff that we might go, oh, well, okay, I didn't realize that was going on in the back of here. And sometimes doing that can help us with the spreadsheets and the forward planning. So I suppose helping women listen to their intuition, I think, seems to be a common thing. From the entrepreneurs, I think those that are new to entrepreneurship, there's a shift in the mindset that, this is solo, it can be lonely, and suddenly you've got a lot on your shoulders. And whether that's the finances, suddenly you're the marketing, the social media, the presenter, the everything. And that can be quite overwhelming as a new entrepreneur. And then those that are established, it's like the burnout, the boredom of, oh my goodness, I've created this monster. I don't know whether I want to continue doing this. So it's quite varied, but there are similar themes. And this is what I feel my role is as coaching, is helping people feel and see and understand their thinking. Because sometimes we literally, the phrase is, we can't see the wood for the trees. Sometimes we just need someone to go, this is in front of you, and you go, oh, or actually, this is something you hadn't even considered. You go, oh my goodness. I love those moments in coaching where it's like, you can literally see on the facial expression of, it's like a light, the lights were on already, but there's just another little twinkly bit. They go, wow, that's quite magical. Yeah.
I think those moments are really powerful, like when someone just lights up or the penny drops.
Exactly. And sometimes it's not the big stuff that you're anticipating. Sometimes it could be, and maybe we've experienced this in some of our conversations, and sometimes it might be that coaching almost comes across as just a conversation, but in the back of my mind, I'm actually directing things. And then it's in the quiet moment that we might be talking about a situation that isn't directly related to your business, that we go, oh, and actually, if we relate that back to your business, okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So why is coaching so important, especially for people who, say, want to go into leadership or entrepreneurship? Why do you think it's so useful?
We see things from our shoes. Sometimes having a different perspective, someone who is a trained coach, it is a skill set, even though it just comes across as a chit chat, to help us see our thoughts in a way that our shoes might have limited us. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. It's enabling us to view things. And I love the concept. If you want a better answer, ask a better question. And sometimes it's the simplest of questions that a coach can go, drop that in. You go, okay.
It's sometimes having that objective perspective, and you can never be fully objective when it comes to your own situation. I guess it's a bit like therapy, right?
Yes. Therapy is looking back. Coaching is going, we're acknowledging what's happened. Sometimes we have to open the door a little bit into the past, but the whole focus of the way I coach is what's going on now? What are the goals? What are the questions? Let's make clearer maps forward for the future. And that's a key, because people are like, oh gosh, I'm not sure I need a coach. It's not therapy.
Yeah.
It's now and forwards.
You're looking more forwards as opposed to your past experiences and why they've shaped you.
Absolutely.
Which is why I actually think the two work really well together.
Yes, hugely. So it's almost like you're kind of at a point where I know I want to get to that point. Let's create the map. Let's kind of, okay, if we go down that route down the map, what does that journey to where you want to be like? My role as a coach is totally your success and happiness. I'm not a family member. I'm not a work colleague. I'm not a boss. So the way I approach is very much to get the best out of you. That lights me up. That's me doing my job correctly. And that's not me. Sometimes I might drop into mentoring. And that's where, having been a business owner and actually done that side of things myself, there might be the occasional time where it's like, okay, you actually want my advice. That's mentoring.
Yep.
Coaching is you're actually driving it. I'm just helping you steer it.
I like how you differentiate between the two. That's interesting.
And in a session, I will always make it very clear, would you like my opinion?
Yeah.
That's mentoring.
Yeah.
Coaching's different.
Yeah. I mean, some people see it as, oh, I don't need help, or is it saying that I'm not achieving my goals or that I'm weak? What would you tell those people?
The absolute honest truth is, absolutely, you've got everything you need in here. You can do it on your own. You read the books, you do this, you potentially, factually, if you've got a good coach, you can achieve it so much quicker and easier, and maybe achieve it in ways that you didn't feel or know were possible.
That's what I say to my clients. I say, I wish I had known of a service available when I was starting out in my career to help me, to coach me for interviews, because it's not just that, oh, I have this magic formula. It's that if you've lived it and experienced it, you know now, you have that prior experience and that knowledge that you wouldn't have when you're starting out. So it's actually utilizing your connections to say, help me get there faster. Yeah.
Some of the coaching I do, for example, the high performance coaching, it's a very masculine kind of, I'm going to high performance. But I come at it from a holistic angle, because as all humans, we can perform at our highest.
Yeah.
And some of my clients I mentioned earlier, like I'm not a human rights lawyer. I have gorgeous respect for it. But where the coaching I approach, I've learned the coaching methods, which then we transfer into her situation. So I don't need to be a human rights lawyer, or I don't need to work in certain industries. So that's actually where the coaching skills come in. And I might not mentor someone in that situation because I don't know their space. Yeah.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
For anyone listening today who's thinking of starting their own business, but feels scared or anxious, what advice would you give them?
I'd actually say feel scared and anxious. You know, it's not for the faint-hearted. Yeah. And I feel a lot of people go, yeah, I want to set up my own business and it's going to give me all this freedom. Oh my goodness, you have no idea. It's a 7-day-a-week job. It is. Whether you're, thinking about your business, you might close the door physically on your business on a Friday evening. You will now appreciate Saturdays, Sundays, you might be thinking, what am I writing? What am I, my marketing, my social media? You're on 7 days a week. So I'm not saying don't do it, but go in with your eyes open. It can be so fun, and you can achieve things that you didn't even dream were possible, but go in with your eyes open. It's a very different space to being in corporate.
It's so different. I think that's one thing that sometimes people maybe glamorize it a bit too much and just say, oh, you're your own boss and you make all the decisions. But actually making decisions sometimes, it's really difficult. You second guess yourself. Am I making the right decision?
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I constantly get people trying to sell to me. And it's actually understanding who are the right people to have in your team. Because at the end of the day, yes, you're an entrepreneur, but you will have people doing different tasks for you. And I've been burnt pretty badly. I'm sure you've also been burnt. And I just want to talk about that a little bit. Like, how do you actually know who are the right people to go with? And is there anything you can share in terms of an example where you might have gotten burnt, or you think, oh, actually, this was completely the wrong person, or this completely took me by surprise?
Yes. Hell yes. I think there's an element of you have to be prepared that you are going to make bad hires, bad collaborations, bad financial decisions. It's part of business.
Yeah.
But that part of business, you have to not let it absorb you. Everything is a learning. Okay, well, now I've learned something new that XYZ isn't right for me. Okay, I've learned, maybe I've got burnt, maybe I've lost some money, a bit of ego, whatever it might be, but it's learning for the next. That's also a part of my coaching, is if someone is thinking of employing or outsourcing, that's where if someone would like me to mentor and step in with some advice, I am fully open with that side of things. I would never make the decision for someone, that the decision has to fully be yours, but I can give a broader view from having made some real howlers through my career. There's definitely collaborations I've done that on reflection I wouldn't have done. Definitely PR companies that on reflection, maybe my relationship with them lasted longer than it should have done. So sometimes it's knowing when to pull the plug with things. Just because something worked, it doesn't mean it's going to continue working or for your stage of your business. I think the other thing as well with new entrepreneurs, the chances are you're not going to turn a profit for a couple of years. So you have to factor that in, unless you've got investment. You absolutely can do businesses with investment, but then you need to be prepared that someone else is actually running your business.
Calling the shots.
Yeah. So, you need to be prepared you've got to do the deep work and the solid work and put the foundations in. Sometimes you just get lucky and there's no rhyme or reason with that. But go in with your eyes open.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Go in with your eyes open. I would say trust your gut as well. It's interesting. Sometimes something feels really right away, and it is. And then other times, I'd say listen to people who really know you, because if the people who really know you meet someone that you're working with, and quite a few of them say, "Oh, I've got a funny feeling about this person," then do pay attention to that, because they've known you for a long time and they might have picked up on things that you haven't picked up because you're so wrapped up in your business, or the person might be telling you what you want to hear, but actually, what are the facts demonstrating? And I also feel that sometimes when people start to see you taking off, they might then think, oh, okay, I can maybe take advantage of it more, or, request maybe unreasonable demands. So that's also something I think to look out for.
Some people will see your shininess and what you're doing and think they want a piece of that. And we can sometimes be flattered by that and potentially get into relationships which are not best suited to us because someone else is trying to better themselves off our, it's kind of, off our coattails. That's,
yes.
Yeah. And that's really common. That is going to happen. But again, it's not until you've maybe got your fingers burnt a couple of times. Go, oh, okay, maybe I can see that in a different way.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, they're all good lessons. At the time, they might feel painful or difficult, but they do teach you. And I feel like you get that kind of vibe afterwards that actually, no, this isn't my person.
Yes, you wouldn't be an entrepreneur if you hadn't have had numerous of those.
Yeah,
it's part of the gig, and yet that's where the resilience has to kick in.
Yeah.
That we, as much as you might be your business or you might be running your business, it's not personal.
Yeah,
you have to learn those boundaries.
Absolutely. So as you say, it's not for everyone, but actually, if you are prepared for really hard work and there are going to be a lot of ups and downs, but you still are really passionate about your idea, your vision, then you need to go for it, because you'll never be ready.
You don't want to get to, the end of life and go, shoulda, woulda, coulda. That's, give it a go.
Yeah, actually, people say that you end up not regretting what you did, but regretting what you didn't do more.
Yeah. And, okay, let's say you give it a go. Whatever your thing is, maybe it's the next biggest business. maybe it's not. Maybe it ends up being a hobby. Maybe it falls flat on its face and you lose a ton of money. It's okay. There are other jobs out there. There's nothing to be ashamed of by giving it a go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's experience at the end of the day.
Yeah. Life's here for, trying on everything in the shop, That's the way I like to view things.
Absolutely. Abigail, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank
I'm so
you.
grateful. Thank you for being on the Invicta Vita podcast today.
Thanks for inviting me.
I loved our chat, and I could chat to you for hours, but we've only got one. So
Maybe another one. We'll do another one.
I would do another one. Thank you so much. You've been
Pleasure.
amazing.